Tim and Silvina, welcome to Coffee with Bruce.
Hello, Bruce. Great to see
Hi,
you.
Bruce. Thank you for having us.
It's a treat. So Tim and Silvina have been the people I've worked with for years and years on building better presentations. They're both part of the Sappington group. And I wanted to spend a bit of time today talking about sort of how one builds a good presentation. And I'll be very transparent here. I started working with Tim and Silvina and team, I think about 5 years ago, and I've always wanted to be a better presenter. And I actually reached out through the folks at VMware to help me get a team that would actually build better PowerPoint for me. So I thought initially I was getting people to make pretty slides, but what I actually found was I'd engaged with a team that's much more sort of comprehensive than that, and it's actually all about building really great presentations. And so if you've ever seen me do a big presentation in the last 5 years, the Sappington team was behind it. So with that introduction, these are two amazing people who really know how to build good presentations, and I wanted to sort of have a bit of a chat about how that all works. So maybe I'll just start by saying one of the first things that you really encouraged me to do was to build personal stories into my presentations. And we've done things ranging from running stories to stories about my history and technology. But I wanted you to maybe say a bit about what do you see as the value of putting personal stories into a presentation?
You know, Bruce, I remember our first interaction, and I remember your hesitance with us. We started asking a question about like, well, this is a really great presentation. A lot of the technical detail is there. Is there anything else that you want to include about you? Because I bet you've had such a successful run of these presentations, especially the future of networking, that people want to know about Bruce. And so your response to me was, you know, I have a reputation to uphold. And I'm concerned that if we go to these places that aren't related to my discipline, that people are going to lose interest. And so I thought to myself, one, I have someone who cares a lot about their craft and what they do. And two, that we have an opportunity, not now, but over a period of time, that we can work together and evolve that story and that personal story to incorporate in the things that you do. And so first, you were really a great collaborator to work with, and being open. I think, first of all, having the willingness to be open is really important. And the other part is just around your ambition for public speaking. And so technology is really interesting because oftentimes technologists and scientists have the opportunity to present. They may have not wanted to do that as part of their career, but they've been put front and center. And so oftentimes they have the opportunity to get on stage. And so a lot of time we'll ask about their ambitions as a spokesperson. And working with you, the one thing that we learned is about, number one, that you were interested in being a better speaker and that you wanted to improve that craft. And so we had spent a lot of time asking you questions about, like, what are your interests? What do you care about? What are the things you do outside of work? How do they relate? And all of a sudden we started to be able to make connections between your personal endeavors and how that relates to your discipline. And from there, we're able to stitch together, for example, your running example, your love for running. We were able to use that to describe some very nascent terminology or concepts. Like 5 years ago, digital transformation people were still trying to figure that out. And so we used running as a way to do that. So it's really helpful to know that you wanted to be a better speaker. And so I think we worked on defining what your ambition is. And so that would be important, right? And then the other one is just around what do you consider to be authentic? Is it, and we've asked a bunch of times about like, what is that? We'd pitch an idea to you and you're like, that's not something I would do. And so from there, we established some guardrails for you, right? We know Bruce doesn't like this, but in here, and we know that he's willing to tell a personal story, that's great. And so then we're able to establish kind of a guardrails or guidelines for you, and knowing that practice is what it takes to be a better spokesperson. And over time, we were able to evolve your story to include more storytelling. Now, I'll say that not every person is Bruce Davey, right? Some people may feel there's one, they broke the mold, right? There's only, some people may feel uncomfortable about personal storytelling, right? And so in that case, we'll need to figure out other methods to be able to explore some of the concepts that we're working on.
I will say the authenticity thing has been absolutely key for me. And, I think I consider that kind of one of my core values, to want to be authentic. And this is true, for example, when I'm on social media too. I really try not to just be like a corporate droid. I'm actually trying to say something that I believe when I'm on social media. Um, but it's very true in presentations. And I think this idea of like when you bring in a personal story, it becomes quite obvious when you're being authentic. People really do get a sense of like, I love running, or I love technology too. And like a lot of the personal stories we've used have actually been from my technology history. And I think, so that's been really helpful. But I wanted to sort of maybe go a bit deeper on that. Like, how do you help your speakers be authentic in presentations? Because I think that's enormously valuable.
Building authenticity really starts with figuring out that presenter persona. Who do you want to be on stage? What do you want to project? Are you an educator? Are you the thought leader? Are you a technology expert? Is it a combination of all of those things? And so blending all of those interests, plus, as Tim mentioned, some of your personality and personal interests as well, helps you to create that authentic persona. I think at the end of the day is things that you care about personally, that you are invested and interested in, and that comes across to the audience. Like if it's something that you love, it comes through in the passion that you bring to the subject. If it's something like Tim mentioned, some of the topics that we have pitched to you over the years that you're like, nah, that's not for me, then it would show, because it would be flat on stage when you would try to talk about something that's like, yeah, I don't really care about that too much.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing how the audience definitely knows when you're not excited about something on stage. And like I've even found this, if you do a presentation for the 5th time, sometimes you start to notice the audience is picking up that you've got a little bit tired of that talk track. So it's actually keeping things fresh is pretty important as well. Now, I did sort of initially have this idea that you were going to make nice slides for me, which in fact you do as well. But so like the visuals are incredibly important. And then like there's a lot more to this than just like doing good like architecture diagrams on PowerPoint. So like how do you view the visual aspect of presentations?
Tim and I certainly talk about, and with our graphic design team as well, which is whenever you're doing storytelling presentations and you're blending technology, it's very much about a balance between the beautiful images for the story itself, like Bruce, when we talk about running, the photos of you running, with the technology itself, right? At the end of the day, we're talking about a particular technology. If we want to talk about NSX, then we're going to bring some technical details. And so there'll be diagrams as well. And so it's about keeping a balance so that you're not over rotating in one direction too much and there's not enough technical depth, or too much technical depth and you exhaust your audience because they're working so hard to keep up with you. So it's a happy medium across the two. You bring some beauty in, and you also bring the beauty of like the technical details for the audience. They both have to be present in there.
Yeah, I think yes, some of the really complicated things we've done together, like explaining a complicated distributed database kind of thing, like those definitely great challenges for doing good visuals. But I guess over time we've had good success getting those to work.
It comes down to aiming for simplicity of visuals. And Bruce, I know we've tackled some really complex diagrams in your past talks, but making sure that you have those like core elements that help you describe the concept and nothing else. That's it. The rest, it can just go away. And it's for, further reference later on. And as long as it's focused on those core bits, then I think you're off and running. And as well, in the past, we've used some, either simple animations or even just like focusing on one element per slide. So you just guide people through how you want it to unfold. And that also helps as well, like breaking it up into pieces.
And another thing that we've done together is, often I'll come in with a bunch of ideas of what I want to talk about, but maybe they don't sort of form a coherent story. And I think that's an area where you've helped a lot, is stitching things together. So how do you go about making a storyline that's sort of consistent throughout a presentation?
One is there's the craft of a story, and a lot of times you think that this is, I'm going to go off and I'm going to think about this really great story and it's just going to manifest. That's a recipe for disaster. And so over the years, what we found is you'll spend so much time trying to come up with a great idea, and then you ultimately run out of time, and then you're scrambling to put details together. And what we found is providing just a little bit of structure and Bruce, you've done such a wonderful job of taking this one-page document that we have, and it's called a story summary slide. And basically, it includes all the great elements to putting together and thinking about a story and a presentation without being overwhelmed. And there's just really three items to it. One is it's who's your audience? Where are they at today? So, for example, if your audience is a mix of business and technology decision makers, you want to think where's their head at coming into this presentation? Do they have preconceived notions of what your speech is going to be about, and do you have ideas on how you want to change their perception? And then part of that, a lot of times we get so focused. That next step of like thinking about the audience is we're a logical lot. However, we're driven by emotion, and so we've incorporated this idea of what we want the audience to walk away from the presentation, what they think, what they're feeling, and what we want them to go do. And so what that really helps is to fine tune or to hone in on the what you want your audience to walk away with. And then the other part is just at a high level, what is your outline? And so typically there's about 3 to 5 different chapters in a typical 30 to 45-minute presentation. And so just having on one page, just describing what those chapters are and how long you think it is. And so that ends up being a really great tool that we use time and time again. And it's a great way to share where you're at and what you're thinking from a presentation perspective with your colleagues. And so it just had become best practice. And there's been lots of times that we're preparing for a speech and you show up in our kickoff meeting, and you're saying like, hey, here's my summary slide about my presentation, and here's what I'm thinking. Let's dive into that. And that's just been a helpful way to get started.
Yeah, that slide has been a game changer for me. I call it the think, feel, do slide, even though there's a lot more on it than that. But for me, like that's actually a really good way to focus is like, what do we want the audience to think? What do we want them to feel? What do we want them to do? Yeah. And that gives you a really good structure for everything else has to work in service of those goals. And then I think the other thing that I found is, we do a number of dry runs together before I do a presentation live. And, free tip for anybody watching, practice your presentations a few times, including with like a critical audience. Like I'll bring in some of my very critical peers as well as your team to tell me what I haven't got right. But I think one of the things we've noticed is, we might have chapter 2, chapter 3, and you going from 2 to 3, something doesn't flow. Mm-hmm. And so we'll spend some time thinking, well, how do we make the story flow from this section on topic A to this next section on topic B? And that comes through practicing the presentation. But yeah, that outline slide, you're absolutely right. It really does kind of force a level of discipline around how to structure a presentation that it's coherent from start to finish. And I always feel good when I get to the end of a dry run if I feel like that story actually flowed from beginning to end.
That's right. Practice makes permanent. And also the great thing that we do together is we come up with that story summary, and then oftentimes we're trying to discern what do we need to create? What are net new content that we have to create for your slide? What are existing content that we can draw from? And we start stitching all that together. And it's almost like practicing to climb a mountain. We start on that first chapter and we're working hard on it. And as we're getting together and working through the details of the content, you're practicing on your own, right? You're talking through it, you're vocalizing the details, and we get to that second chapter and you're working on it. And then it's subconscious, but every time we get together, which is normally on a weekly basis, you're practicing every single week.
Yeah.
And we're working on putting together the presentation, which is really helpful to have a partner or somebody you can work with on your presentation. So you can, instead of sitting at your desk by yourself, which is hard, yeah, when you're talking out loud with somebody else and working through stuff, those moments when you're like, hey, to your point, chapter 3 and 4 should be reversed. It's just not working. Yeah. Let's move it around.
And I also say, I find that explaining it to you, because you're, not the most technical audience I'm going to speak to, if I can make it clear to you, then I've got a pretty good sense that I've made it clear. I may have to go deeper technically for some other members of the audience, but the idea of how do I make it understandable to people whose field of expertise is not mine? I think that's an enormously valuable exercise.
Yeah.
I know so much about distributed databases now. and quantum computers and all those good other good things. So but maybe just to sort of wrap things up here, is like maybe just any final thoughts you think about like what makes for a great presentation.
The number one golden rule, which is know your audience, right? To make sure that you're speaking at the altitude that they can, grasp the content and expect it to be, and deliver the type of material that they want to see from you. So that's like the number one thing. You get that one down, and the rest kind of flows into place.
Bruce, I would say, especially now with the realities of the pandemic and how we've all immediately transitioned to virtual and video presentations, is that people are so overwhelmed right now with information and having to sit in front of their computer and Zoom all day long. We owe it to them to be brief, to really take a hard look at your content, and is there a way that you can cut it by 30% or maybe even 50%? Would be just doing a great service to your audience. And the other part too is, which I really like, that what you did with the recent VMworld, Bruce, was that you incorporated a little bit of just some pauses. It was almost like a variety show where you had a really great intro video of you starting the day, and then there's a couple little breaks just for people to have a mental break and just to be human for a second is really important.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I think that's a great. I love the idea that less is more. I think we've touched on it a few times here that, like, yes, a shorter presentation can be better than the long version, and also that a less cluttered slide is better than the one with all the details. I think those are great lessons to live by. So, look, I'll just say it's been absolutely fantastic working with you guys over the years, and hopefully there's some good nuggets here for other people to take away to help them build better presentations as well.
Thank you for the time, Bruce. It's been a great pleasure working with you all the years, and all the best in your new chapter.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Thank you for having us here.
All right, cheers.